There is a moment, and if you think back carefully, you've already lived it, where something shifted. Not dramatically, not with an argument or a betrayal or a single moment you could point to and say, that's when everything changed. It was quieter than that. A conversation that left you feeling slightly emptier than when it started. A celebration that somehow didn't feel fully celebrated. A moment of vulnerability that was received in a way that didn't quite feel like safety. A feeling, small, specific, persistent, that something about a friendship you had trusted was not entirely what you believed it to be. And then you did what most people do with that feeling. You dismissed it. You told yourself you were overthinking, that you were being unfair, that the other person was just having a hard time, or didn't mean it that way, or that the friendship had enough history behind it to deserve the benefit of the doubt. And so you filed the feeling away. You kept showing up. You kept giving. You kept extending the same trust that the feeling was quietly warning you had already been spent. And the cost of that dismissal, the accumulated cost of choosing the comfort of a familiar story over the discomfort of an accurate one, is something most people carry for years before they understand what it actually was. Here's what no one tells you about fake friendships. The damage they do is almost never dramatic. It doesn't arrive in a single visible moment of betrayal. It comes in the form of a slow leak. A gradual erosion of your energy, your confidence, your willingness to trust, your sense of what you're worth to the people around you. Because every interaction with someone whose friendship is performance rather than genuine connection extracts something from you, not all at once. In the way that a slow leak empties a container, imperceptibly, consistently, until the day you reach for what you thought was there and find it gone. And the most dangerous part? You were the one keeping the container open, not because you were foolish, not because you were weak, because you were never taught the specific, observable behavioral signs that distinguish genuine connection from its imitation. Because most people never learn to see the difference between someone who is in your life because they genuinely value you and someone who is in your life because of what your presence provides them. Today, that changes. What follows are the precise behavioral patterns, not the obvious ones, not the ones everyone already knows about, that reveal a fake friendship before it costs you anything more than it already has. These are not feelings, not intuitions, not generalizations about how people behave. They are specific, repeatable, observable signals that the brain broadcasts involuntarily. Signals that appear in the texture of interaction when you know exactly where and how to look. Once you see them, you cannot unsee them. And once you can read them accurately, you become the most dangerous thing a fake friend can encounter. Someone who already knows. The first pattern is the one that reveals itself in the smallest unit of conversation, and it's hiding in a place almost no one thinks to look. The quality of the questions they ask you. Genuine friendship is curious, not performatively, not in the way someone asks how you're doing as a social formality before the conversation moves to what they actually came to talk about, but deeply, specifically, genuinely curious about the details of your interior life, about what you're thinking, about what you're feeling, about what matters to you and why and how it's going. That curiosity has a specific texture. It follows up, it remembers. It connects this conversation to the last one. Picks up threads that were left unresolved, returns to things you mentioned in passing weeks ago, demonstrates through its specificity that what you shared actually landed somewhere, that it was stored, that it mattered enough to be retained. Fake friendship does not have this texture. It has a different one entirely. The questions are present, there are questions, there is the form of interest, but they don't go anywhere. They are asked but not listened to. The answer to "how are you doing" receives a brief nod before the conversation moves to what was always going to be the real subject. The follow-up never comes. The thread dropped last week stays dropped. The thing you mentioned was important to you gets met the next time you speak, with no evidence that it was retained at all. Here's the psychological mechanism underneath this. Genuine friendship is other-oriented. The attention genuinely moves toward you. The interest in your experience is real, and so the information you provide actually registers, is processed, stored, integrated into the ongoing model they carry of who you are and what matters to you. That model is the foundation of genuine intimacy. It is what makes someone feel truly known rather than merely familiar. But in a fake friendship, the attention only appears to move toward you. Beneath the surface, it remains self-oriented. The questions are asked because asking questions is what you do in a friendship, not because the answers are genuinely wanted. And because the answers aren't genuinely wanted, they don't fully register. The information passes through without being stored. The model doesn't update, and the result is a relationship where, despite significant time spent together, you don't feel genuinely known because you aren't. Here is the specific diagnostic. Think about the last 3 times this person asked you about something important in your life. Did they ask follow-up questions the next time you spoke? Not as a formality, but with the specificity that demonstrates genuine retention? Did they connect what you told them to what they already know about you in a way that signals you exist in their mind as a 3-dimensional person rather than a recurring character in their own story? If the answer to those questions is consistently no, if the friendship has the shape of mutual exchange but repeatedly fails the test of genuine retention, the attention was always performance. And performance, however convincing in the moment, always reveals its nature through what it cannot sustain. The inability to sustain genuine interest in someone else's life is not a personality quirk. It is a signal. And signals, once you know how to read them, are far more reliable than words. The second pattern is the one that exposes fake friendship most clearly in moments of contrast, and those moments are available to you in every interaction if you know what to measure. The difference between how they treat you when you need something and how they treat you when they need something. Real friendship is bidirectional, not perfectly symmetrical. No relationship achieves perfect symmetry, but genuinely bidirectional. The energy flows both ways. The giving and receiving exist in some reasonable proportion to each other. The relationship has a quality of mutuality that both parties can feel without measuring. But fake friendship has a directionality. The energy moves primarily one way, and the direction it moves reveals exactly what the friendship is actually built on. Here is the pattern in specific behavioral terms. When they need something, support, time, attention, advice, a favor, a listening ear, the relationship activates. You hear from them. They are present. The friendship is warm and alive and close. But when you need the same, when the position reverses and you're the one who needs support, time, attention, help, something shifts. The availability decreases. The responses come slower. The warmth that was so readily present when they needed you becomes more effortful, more managed, less sustaining. Notice what this reveals. The relationship is activated by their need. It goes dormant when that need is met. They appear when you can give them something. They recede when the exchange reverses. And over time, over the accumulated pattern of many such cycles, the relationship produces an asymmetry that you feel as exhaustion even before you consciously understand its source. Because here is what's happening at a psychological level. In a friendship built on extraction, on access to what you provide rather than genuine regard for who you are, the other person's relationship with the friendship is fundamentally instrumental. You are not a person to them in the full sense. You are a resource. A warm, familiar, trusted resource, but a resource nonetheless. And resources get engaged when they're needed and set aside when they're not. This is why you feel closer to them than they feel to you. Why the friendship seems more important to you than it seems to be to them. Why you leave interactions feeling like you gave something and didn't receive its equivalent. The exchange is real, but it's not mutual. And the absence of mutuality is the fingerprint of instrumentality. Here is the behavioral test that makes this visible with uncomfortable clarity. The next time you need something genuine, not a favor, but real support, real presence, real showing up, notice not just whether they provide it, but the quality with which they provide it. Is the support freely given, with the same warmth and availability they bring when their own needs are being met? Or does it feel slightly effortful? Slightly obligatory? Slightly like something being managed rather than something being offered? That quality, the texture of the support when the direction of need reverses, tells you everything about the foundation beneath the friendship. Because genuine care doesn't require management. It flows. And when it requires management, what you're feeling is the effort of someone maintaining a performance that serves them, even in the direction of giving. The third pattern is the one that operates most quietly and damages most deeply, and it lives in a specific conversational behavior almost no one monitors. What happens to your stories? Every friendship involves storytelling, the sharing of experiences, memories, observations, ideas, the back and forth of narrative that builds the texture of genuine connection. And in that exchange of stories, there is a specific pattern that reveals the actual orientation of the relationship with extraordinary precision. In a genuine friendship, your stories are received. they land. They produce engagement, questions, genuine responses that demonstrate the other person was actually present for what you shared. And critically, they stay yours. Your experience remains the subject. The conversation lives in what you shared long enough for it to be genuinely explored before it moves anywhere else. In a fake friendship, something different happens. Your story becomes a bridge. You share something, an experience, a challenge, an observation, and before it has fully landed, before the space around it has been genuinely inhabited, it becomes a launch pad, a transition, a brief stop on the way to what was always going to be the real destination. Their story, the pattern is so consistent that once you identify it, you will see it in virtually every interaction with certain people. You share, they briefly acknowledge. And then the word actually or speaking of or that reminds me appears, and suddenly you're in their experience, their challenge, their observation, their story, and your story, which you were still inside of, has been vacated, left behind, converted from a subject into a segue. This is called conversational narcissism, and it was documented in sociology by Charles Derber as one of the most common patterns in social interaction. But what makes it relevant here, what elevates it from a conversational habit to a signal about the actual nature of a relationship, is its consistency. Everyone redirects conversation sometimes. Everyone occasionally hears something that sparks a strong association and follows the association before fully completing the exchange. That's human. That's normal. The signal is not in the individual instance. The signal is in the pattern. If with a specific person, your stories consistently become their stories. If the conversational current reliably flows from your experience to their experience, from your challenges to their equivalent challenges, from your wins to their comparable or superior wins, that consistency is not a habit. It is the conversation expressing the relationship's actual orientation. You are not the subject of the relationship. You are the occasion for it. And that distinction between being the subject and being the occasion is the precise difference between being known and being used, between a friend and an audience. The fourth pattern is the most counterintuitive one on this entire list, and it will require you to think differently about something you've probably always interpreted as warmth. The friendship that requires constant maintenance. Most people assume that a friendship requiring significant effort to maintain is simply one that both parties are invested in keeping alive. That the effort is a sign of commitment, that working at a relationship means valuing it. And in specific circumstances, that's true. But there is a category of friendship where the maintenance required has nothing to do with the natural friction of two lives moving in different directions. Where the effort is not about overcoming distance or scheduling or the competing demands of full lives. Where the maintenance is required because without constant effort, without constant feeding, constant reassurance, constant demonstration of loyalty, the friendship becomes unstable, punitive, cold. That friendship is not a friendship. It is a management relationship. And the thing being managed is someone else's insecurity, packaged and presented as closeness. Here's what it looks like in behavioral terms. When you haven't reached out recently, there is a coolness, a pointed distance, a shift in warmth that communicates without words that your absence was noted and is being registered. When you prioritize something else over time with them, there is a reaction, subtle or explicit, that frames your independent choices as evidence of insufficient regard. When you succeed at something or your attention is elsewhere, there is a withdrawal of warmth that functions as punishment for your autonomy. The friendship, in other words, has conditions, not stated conditions. Those would be easy to evaluate and respond to. Unstated conditions. Conditions that you learn through the pattern of punishment and reward, that you internalize gradually until you find yourself structuring your choices around managing this person's emotional response to you. Not because you want to, but because the cost of not doing so has been made clear through repeated experience. This is not friendship. This is a control dynamic performing as friendship. And the cost is not just the energy it extracts from you. It is the gradual reshaping of your behavior around someone else's need for control. The slow adjustment of your choices, what you say, what you share, how often you reach out, how available you make yourself, based not on what genuinely serves you, but on what manages their reaction. And that adjustment compounds. Over time, the management of their emotional response to you becomes the primary work of the relationship. More energy goes into maintaining their stability than into the actual shared experience of the friendship. And you arrive at a place, often after years, where you are exhausted by someone you are supposed to find nourishing, drained by someone who is supposed to add to you, smaller, more careful, more managed in your own life because of someone who calls themselves your friend. The test is precise. Ask yourself honestly, do you feel free in this friendship? Free to succeed without managing their reaction. Free to be unavailable without managing their response. Free to make choices that serve you without calculating how this person will receive them. Free to simply be, changing, growing, moving, without the friendship requiring constant reassurance that the movement doesn't represent a threat. If the answer is no, if the friendship requires you to be smaller, more careful, more managed to function, that friendship is not supporting your life. It is replacing parts of it. The fifth pattern is the one that appears in the rarest moments and reveals the deepest truth. How someone responds when something genuinely good happens to you and they have nothing to gain from it. This is the final test. The one that cuts through every performance, every managed warmth, every carefully maintained surface. Because the moments when you succeed at something significant, when a genuine breakthrough occurs, when something you've worked toward arrives, when life moves in a direction that is unmistakably good for you, those moments are the ones where the internal reality of every relationship in your life becomes briefly visible. Because genuine joy for someone else's success is not a neutral experience. It requires something specific. It requires the complete absence in that moment of the comparison running underneath. The ability to receive your win without measuring it against their position. To be genuinely, uncomplicatedly happy for you. Not because your success also benefits them. Not because being seen to celebrate you serves their image. Not because the performance of happiness is the appropriate social response, but because they actually, purely, want good things for you. That is rare. Genuinely rare. Because genuine happiness for someone else's success requires a relationship with one's own worth that is internal rather than comparative. And most people's relationship with their own worth is deeply, chronically comparative. So here's what to watch for with precision. Not whether they congratulate you. Congratulations are easy. They cost nothing and prove nothing. Watch the energy of the congratulations. Watch whether it expands or contracts. Watch whether their presence in the moment of your win makes the moment feel larger or smaller. Watch what happens to their face in the half second before the social performance catches up, before the smile that was always going to appear arrives and covers whatever was there first. Watch specifically how long the celebration of your moment lasts before the conversation moves, before the redirect occurs, before the parallel achievement appears. Before something that is about them gets introduced into a moment that was, until that introduction, entirely and cleanly about you. A genuine friend can sit in your win. They don't need to re-enter the frame. They don't need the win to be qualified, contextualized, or companioned by their own comparable experience. They can simply be present in your good moment, for you, without the pull toward themselves becoming visible. That quality, the ability to be fully present in someone else's joy without the gravity of their own position pulling them back toward themselves, is one of the clearest expressions of genuine care available in human relationship. And its absence, in specific moments, in specific people, tells you with a clarity that no amount of reassuring history can override exactly what the friendship is and isn't built on. Here is what all 5 patterns share, at the level beneath behavior, beneath psychology, beneath the specific diagnostic tools this conversation has given you. They are all expressions of the same fundamental distinction. The distinction between someone who values you and someone who values what you provide. Between someone whose orientation toward you is genuine and someone whose orientation toward you is instrumental. Between a friend and a very convincing performance of one. And here is the thing most people never reach, because reaching it requires sitting with something uncomfortable. The fact that you have kept certain fake friendships alive, not because you were deceived, but because on some level you preferred the familiar story to the accurate one, is not evidence of weakness. It is evidence of something deeply human. The need for connection is so fundamental, so biological, so woven into the architecture of what we are, that we will accept its imitation rather than face its absence. That is not a character flaw. That is the human condition. But here's what changes when you develop the ability to see clearly. You stop paying the price of the imitation. You stop spending your energy, your trust, your vulnerability, your genuine self on people who are consuming those things without reciprocating them. And in the space that opens up, in the energy and attention and emotional availability that was previously allocated to maintaining relationships that were quietly draining you, something becomes possible that wasn't possible before: real connection. With people whose curiosity about you is genuine and whose retention of what you share is real, whose support flows towards you as naturally when you need it as it did when they needed it, whose stories don't consistently replace yours, whose closeness doesn't require your smallness, whose response to your success expands rather than contracts. Those people exist. And the reason most people don't have more of them is not that they're rare in the world. It's that the fake friendships occupying the available space prevented them from being found. Clear the space, not through dramatic confrontations or announced endings, through the quiet, consistent withdrawal of what fake friendships run on: your openness, your reassurance, your tolerance of the asymmetry, your willingness to pretend not to see what you're now able to see. Withdraw those things and watch what remains. Because what remains, what continues without being fed by your performance of not noticing, is the real thing, or the absence of it. And the absence of a fake friendship is not a loss. It is the first condition of a real one. So the question is not, how do I know who my real friends are? The real question, the one worth carrying into every relationship you're currently in and everyone you're about to enter, is this: when I remove the story I've been telling myself about this person and look only at what their behavior has consistently shown me, what is actually there? Because the behavior was always telling the truth. You just have to be willing to listen to it.